in this show, Killer Croc beat King Shark so bad. I'm like, how did Batman handle this in universe? The Batman in this universe must be the most jacked character because there's no
It's the
way.
absolute Batman. Hi, I'm Chamar Griffith.
And I'm Andrew Tejada. We're going through superhero productions to let you know if they're still fun or the hype around it was dumb on
Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. Welcome to this week's installment of Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. My name is Chamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I am Andrew Tejada, codename Arte.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That was the year a small little isekai, you've probably not heard of it. It was called Inuyasha premiered. And from what I remember, this girl Kagome goes and she wants to hook up with a fox dude, and they have to collect like 1,000,000 pieces of the One Piece. I don't know. I never watched it. I never got into it. I might be wrong.
All the pieces will then assemble into the Millennium Puzzle.
I think so. I think there was a Millennium Puzzle. I think they had to duel. And that Bakugan, they screamed. Metabee was a main character, I think, if I remember this correctly.
We've been pissed off the entire side of fandom.
And they were all Slytherins.
Somebody's definitely going to Naruto run up into my studio booth right now. But
when Itachi was revealed as the final boss of Inuyasha, that was crazy.
Itachi, that was Gojo, man.
Right.
In disguise.
Oh, how can I forget the most obvious twist?
Man. Well, as you can see from that, we have had an extensive history of, in our childhoods or in our adulthoods, just experiencing different Japanese productions, especially when it came to anime. So it obviously makes sense that the Warner Brothers studio would try to channel in on our love for anime by bringing together a ragtag group of individuals and criminals to experience an anime production. Thankfully, we are not talking about Batman Ninja today.
Oh, no. We're still not doing Batman Ninja 2.
We are instead talking about Suicide Squad Isekai. So with 10 episodes, I'm just going to assume, I didn't even get a chance to look at the TV rating for this, but I'm assuming this is TVMA.
I think so. I don't think the kids should be watching this one.
Yeah, if it goes higher, there's a possibility that might have been the rating for it, but TVMA is where I'm capping it right now. So this show recently wrapped up its first season after premiering this past summer in 2024. This is going to be a little bit different because as opposed to our more kind of American Western style animation productions, this is actually treated more so almost like a film in its ways of how it's produced, given the fact that the series is entirely directed by Eri Osada, produced by Shinya Surioka. I am very sorry for any mispronunciations I am going through. Written by Tappei Nagasuki. This particular person is known for another popular anime isekai series, Re:Zero.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I think that while not too many people were looking forward to this show in particular, Suicide Squad Isekai, when it was first announced, I think this is what pulled a lot of people into the direction of definitely want to check this out. Also, Nagasuki teamed up alongside with Eiji Umahara, and joining for a few of the episodes as well, we have Tomomi Kawaguchi. This is going to be a big one because the animation services were provided by WIT Studio. If you're unfamiliar with Studio, you might know their work for the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan.
Oh, yeah. That explains a lot.
Yep. Spy Family, Vinland Saga, and soon, I'm assuming in 2025, because I believe I saw that they recently released the art style of what they're going to look like. They are going to be responsible for the remake of One Piece.
I trust them. I gotta say, I trust that resume. Yeah, I mean, once you say Attack on Titan on the resume, that you should just become CEO. So it really, that's good. We're good.
Of course, because this is a Cape or Cap episode, especially a part of our Run It Back, because again, we are going through the animated productions that came out this past summer under the DC moniker. Of course, I got to share out what was the score. Because it is actually a Japanese production, this does not have a Rotten Tomatoes score. It does have one for the fans, where the fans have currently ranked it at 61%. And I did find the IMDb score of 6.4 out of 10.
Okay, that's good for our podcast, because it's right in the middle.
It's right in the middle.
That's what we like to see here.
So this show again was 10 episodes. So there's a pretty extensive cast list here, especially because it's not just only the introduction of characters from a bigger comic company, but obviously because it is an isekai where characters are transported from their known world to a brand new one, the cast list is extensive, y'all. If I listed out all the characters in this show, this would be the entire run of our Run It Back. And as you know, Andrew, you mind explaining again real quick the rules of our recap of one individual season of the show?
Yes. Here we are not going to break it down one by one. This is a Run It Back. This is not a walkthrough. So we're going to do a couple lightning rounds covering things like the story, the characters, crazy scenes, things we're like, huh? And then we give our final verdict of cape or cap right at the end. So this is a speedy way to give you a chance to engage with the season and the story. Speaking of story, once we start, you can feel free to skip right to the end if you want to check it out and you haven't seen it yet. We'd recommend skipping to the end. You can go cape or cap, where we will not give away any plot specific things, just the verdict. So for those who are still like on the fence about checking it out, but you want some opinions, we'll give them to you, spoiler free. You're just gonna have to skip most of this to get it.
And again, we are limiting ourselves to a 15-minute discussion for each of these topics, so we'll have a pretty good sense of when to head on over to your spoiler-free section of our episode. And joining us for this entire thing, they're not in the booth with us right now. They're just in the episodes that we are going to be covering. So our cast list today, again, it's pretty extensive, especially because we have Japanese and an English voice cast. Actually, did you watch this in Japanese or did you watch it dubbed?
I watched it subbed. I wanted to get the original intent of it. Yeah, I didn't even know there was an English option, to be honest with you.
Yeah, something I've learned is that, like, if you wait 2 or so weeks, especially if it seems to be popular enough, they'll probably release it in an English production. And I think that's what they did here, because I remember when this first came out, I watched like the first couple of episodes. And then I think by week 3 of its premiere, that's when I saw the first episode had already been dubbed along with the second episode, just because they did a 2-for drop on that day.
Well, I gotta say, I really enjoyed going with the Japanese voice cast. It reminded me of watching something like JoJo's, where it's like you have the option, but I mean, I kind of like going to Japan.
So joining us in Japan, we got Harley Quinn, who is voiced by Anna Nagasai in the Japanese version. English, we have Carly Hoke. I will be going through the list of these characters. First name will definitely be the Japanese voice actor, followed by the English voice actor, just to save some time for ourselves.
Yeah.
Deadshot is voiced by Reigo Yamaguchi and voiced by Jovan Jackson. Peacemaker is voiced by Takahito Koyasu and Sean Patrick Judge. Clayface is voiced by Jun Fukuyama, who also provides the voice of the Knight Cecil in our show here too. And then we have Brandon Hernsberger, who is doing the voice acting for the English side. Nanue, King Shark is a shark, is voiced by Subaru Kumura and Andrew Love. Rick Flag Jr. is voiced by Taku Yashiro and Jeremy Gee, or G. I'm sorry, I did not check that up. But Jeremy, thank you for your work there. And finally, we have Amanda Waller, who is voiced by Kujira, as well as Jasmine Renee Thomas. I just thought this was so funny because technically it is the number of names in that particular listing was like enough to be like 2 first names and 2 last names, but one Kujira and the other was Jasmine Renee Thomas. So with that, because we have a TVMA Don't worry, I will bleep this out later. But let's fuck some shit up and
Oh
start
yeah.
our cape or cap review of this latest season of Suicide Squad Isekai.
So, I think the story starts specifically as a nod slash look at this to Suicide Squad 2016 because it starts with Harley Quinn and Joker escaping from a crime and Katana showing up. Um, so I was like, well, I see what you guys are doing here. But Katana doesn't have a 15-minute intro from Rick Flag. Instead, she pretty easily takes down Harley Quinn and Harley Quinn is drafted into the Suicide Squad. So we cut ahead. Harley has been in jail for some amount of time, and Amanda Waller comes around as she usually does, implanting bombs in their necks. And we get the lineup of Harley. We see Harley, Deadshot, and Peacemaker right away. But the last two people are mysterious because one of them appears to be Michael Jackson or Musan Kitsumushi, whichever you prefer. And the other person is just off screen this entire time. And all they know about their mission is they're being sent away to accomplish some kind of task. And after their plane crashes very severely, they find out that they have been taken into an entirely different world.
And it's very isekai like, where we are put into a more fantasy aspect of a world. So there are elves and orcs and monstrous looking things. There's like giant pigs that may remind you of I think it was Bebop from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but with less clothing. So we get a chance to see them jump into action because the character that seems to serve as, we know everything about everything in this particular setting, turns out to be our Michael Jackson character is actually Clayface, who is revealed to be more kind of like a, very strong actor who doesn't get many roles, unfortunately, or at least not like a leading man role. So he's explaining to the team, and I'm assuming to us as well, like the concept of an isekai, that you are an individual from another world who is transported to this new world that is completely unlike anything that you've seen. So because it's monsters and all of that, and it's the Suicide Squad, their immediate reaction is to just go into attack mode, which I will say I'm glad to see that the Suicide Squad's intentions and that vibe and that these seem exactly like what you would expect from these characters, especially Peacemaker, who originally is not wearing any of his helmet, but it's just basically in, I don't know, like a brown paper bag and like a sleeveless jumpsuit from prison.
Yeah, I love Peacemaker's look because he does not start with the helmet, but refuses to show his face because he believes it interferes with the peace. And right away with their modern weapons, they're able to take down this hybrid army of talking animals and other creatures. But as soon as other knights from the kingdom show up, they immediately throw all of the Suicide Squad in jail, which is absolutely hilarious. That the first thing they do on their mission is end up back in jail.
Yeah.
So while in jail, they meet up with Rick Flag, who was also in jail, and they finally get an idea of what their mission is. Basically, Amanda Waller found out about this magical world and wants to see what resources she can take to benefit the US government exclusively. So she is sending Suicide Squad to basically end the major conflict so that they can start trading, so that the US can start trading freely with this land. I really, really like this mission because a lot of times when you do a Suicide Squad story, you kind of have to justify why Amanda Waller chose a particular group of people to accomplish something, and it can feel random sometimes, the assortments. But here, she literally just has to throw enough bodies at the problem to solve it. So it's completely justified. Anyone she sends is completely justified. There doesn't have to be team synergy. They just have to know how to kill people. That's all. That's why I really like this being their whole mission, is just to like jump into a war, try to stop it.
Mm-hmm. And it turns into obviously some more Suicide Squad like shenanigans where, because they are in the jail, we exceed how like they're experiencing what they're trying to use a lot of like their natural understanding of what it is to be in jail, like taking out the big man and, you know, sitting with certain groups to navigate this world. And obviously, because there's this strong language barrier between the fact that, again, this is a brand new world with characters who are not human, it definitely shifts their understanding of what to do. So even the smallest phrasing or word turns into a giant battle that leads into them being thrown into deeper solitary. And we get a chance to see that there's like because another element of most isekais is that when a person is taken from their world and brought to a new one, they develop some kind of new ability. This is I feel like this is more of a recent trait that's been included in most isekais. Like some of the stuff that I've seen, like when we mentioned Inuyasha, and I'm also going to think of like Digimon because I mean it's not technically an I guess in my mind I see it as an isekai.
Yeah, I think some people have called it an isekai. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. So usually in those cases, the characters are basically their own same strength, same skill set. This time around, we're seeing that something different is happening to some people. And the person who picked up on that is our Clayface Michael Jackson here, who's realizing that his only power set seems to change, as instead of just being able to manipulate his own form, he seems to be able to manipulate the clay that's around him. And I really like this particular twist, and it made me kind of excited to see what other skill sets or power sets might come up. Unfortunately, I don't think much of it happened except for Harley's side and maybe King Shark.
Yeah, there was an odd narrative choice to not have the villain, the main Suicide Squad. Isn't most of them don't have access to their powers except for Clayface for the majority of the run, which I think kind of segues into what becomes most of the main plot next, because the Suicide Squad very easily is able to overwhelm armies. The five of them are able to tip this entire war towards their scale. But what ends up happening is a group of villains, a previous Suicide Squad consisting of Thinker, Killer Croc, Enchantress, and Ratcatcher, they show up, and they have been in this world a little bit longer. Also, Katana's there. They've been in this world a little bit longer, so they have the abilities. They hone their own abilities. So I think to make them all more of a threat, the Suicide Squad that we meet is purposely not given access to their powers for most of the run. That seems to be making sense to me, of like, because if they had the powers they had in the last episode, this wouldn't be much of a fight.
This would have been a 30-minute movie and done, just for literal plot armor and actual armor.
This would have been pretty much a wrap. So they have they are fighting against these villains, and eventually they turn the whole war around. Basically, the Suicide Squad wins. They win the whole war. All they have to do is just basically take a victory lap. But the queen of this kingdom turns on them at the last minute and demands that they either leave the world or be executed immediately, because she frames it as she doesn't want the kingdom thinking they're too reliant on criminals. However, that's not the entire truth of why the queen wants them dead.
So this is when we kind of jump into a little bit of like the big reveal, in which the queen, apparently, I'm gonna assume that she has been dead this entire time, and instead has been taken over or has been turned into. We have this person here, the Undead King. I appreciated this choice of naming though, because even though the actress or the voice of it is definitely female presenting, it is nice to see that it was just like, I got all this power, I might as well just be the king. So it is a great twist in my opinion, especially because the other story that's been developing throughout is we have the princess Fiona as well as Cecil, who are the top knight here. Princess Fiona has been wondering, has been really trying to get the Suicide Squad to help them win the war. And she's been pretty complacent in just like the proceedings and things that are happening in her court. So even when her mom, or quote unquote mom, is telling her that like we can't rely on them, she kind of agrees with it until it's revealed that her mom has been dead this entire time, and that the king of the undead king is the one manipulating everything for the sake of trying to have as many dead people as possible so that she can use her powers to rise people back up from the dead and create this undead army to take over this world. And it is a great kind of story, in my opinion, because of the fact that, you know, it is a twist that comes at the very end. Like, we are sitting here this entire time, it's like, yo, why is this queen so mean? Like, I get if you're trying to say you don't want criminals to be your heroes, but at the same time, you're also seem like you just want this war to keep on going on. Like, in my mind, I know I was definitely thinking that maybe she's like profiting from something, or there's some other deal that she had made. Also, there was always the maybe she's being manipulated from the side. But that was like a final thought. So when that came up, I was like, oh, this was a good twist.
Yeah, I agree. I did love, because you always got the sense that the queen was not into the squad, and you thought, oh, it's because they're commoners. Oh, she's being shown up. But yeah, it was just a great twist that, you know, they were throwing a wrench in her plans as soon as they got there. So the now this undead king decides to send, you know, a skeletal army. Luckily, this is the time when the Suicide Squad taps into their powers, so they all are able to tap into their powers by, and this is a really creative way. The magical knight Cecil gets severely injured. So what Deadshot does is takes pieces of Cecil's armor and distributes them among the squad. So with each of the pieces, they gain magical ability, full control of their magical ability, and are able to pretty much cut through the army. They also convince Enchantress, who had been blackmailed by the villain the whole time. Enchantress joins their side, and with a clever switcheroo between Harley and Fiona, who look exactly like each other, they're able to get close enough to the villain to stop the undead reign and win the day. However, the season ends with a couple final twists. Katana, throughout the Isekai, has kind of been mysterious. Her motivations were kind of very ambiguous, and we thought that was because, you know, she works for Amanda Waller. But here at the end, it's revealed Katana never went to the magical world. So it's revealed that Katana is actually the Joker in disguise, and furthermore, the Joker was pulling the strings this entire time, and is looking forward to doing more of that in the future as the world finally reaches some stability.
Yeah, it's an interesting twist just because I kind of was expecting for Joker not to have shape-shifting powers for some reason. Like, I didn't think that would be the magical ability that they will go with. Mainly because and I kind of had to spend like a couple minutes afterwards thinking like, well, would it have been better if they did trickster because of the word trick versus the word joke? But overall, this is like one big joke that's being played. So I guess it does make sense that Joker would be the one to be able to manipulate this. So I did have a little, just only because it was just like, it's because of the fact that we have Clayface, who is determined to be a shapeshifter. And I do wonder if maybe this is just clever use of language throughout the show, because technically, while he does not shift really into other characters or people, the fact that they're kind of leaving that as like a hint for the fans was just like shapeshift. So it's like really showing this like, oh, there's something more here. And once it came to the end, I was like, okay, I can see why shapeshift and was used so often, and it is cool to see. I also did have a question though about Joker's motivations, because it does seem throughout the story we see that Harley is like using her time with Joker to remember as Clayface had put it, her training montage to work through stuff. So at the end, he does say that he's using this as an opportunity to cure the boredom that Harley might have been experiencing, and is wondering if this is what Harley wants, or does she want something more. So I am wondering, is this a different take on Joker in terms of his mindset, or is he still kind of like just doing it for himself?
This is a great segue to our character section
Mhm.
of the Caper Cap for today, because I think where I was a little let down in terms of characterization comes down to the big villains of the piece,
Yeah.
because in this show, Killer Croc, fantastic. His
Mm.
He routinely is beating on King Shark, and he was beat King Shark so bad. I'm like, how did Batman handle this in universe? The Batman in this universe must be the most jacked character, because there's
It's
no
the
way.
absolute Batman.
It has to be, because this Killer Clark was giving people the business. The Thinker was really great. Had a great conversation, great confrontation with Harley. This mental battle they
Mhm.
had was really good. Ratcatcher, there's
Greatest scene
oh my
in
god. Yeah,
anything
yeah.
I've ever seen.
Oh my god, the Ratcatcher and Deadshot relationship.
Oh my
Um
gosh.
I definitely want to get into that scene a little bit later, but
Oh yeah. Don't worry, I have a full list about that because that was one of my favorite scenes in this entire show.
fantastic. Oh man, there's so much to say there. And Enchantress, great motivation. Her body was being held, her human body was being
Mm.
held by the villain, and that's why she did this. Because it's implied throughout that she went easy on the squad, and we learn why. But that same depth of character is unfortunately not given to the Joker or Amanda Waller or the Undead
Mhm.
King. All those three characters, well, Amanda Waller and the Undead King are very single track in this.
Yeah.
They just want to acquire one goal, but beyond that, there's really nothing. There's really no deeper meaning, deeper reason. We don't really get insight on them. So it just comes at like they're just two statues of the series, just making sure everything goes along, but actively Amanda Waller really doesn't do much, which is really surprising to see in
Mhm.
a Suicide Squad production. She really just sits behind a computer and lets things happen. Um, and then on the other end, Joker. Yeah, I while I always love Joker coming in, I just was not clear on what he accomplished by doing this, or when he was the villain and when he was himself. Not sure how that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, because another thing I had about that was just like I would love to see I'm assuming this is getting a season 2 just because of the way it ended. It's very much just still unresolved. When it happened for him, when was he sent to this world? Because when Harley is captured, it's a very um I don't know the exact phrasing for it, but it's like a very intense scene of just this back and forth of like Harley being captured while the portal to the Isekai world is being opened up. So and even at one point she stops Joker from coming into the place because she's protecting him from being taken into custody. Um, while at the same time you see like this now understanding as a flash forward of her being sent to this world. So is it that during the time that she had been captured this entire time he had been operating there and was like working towards maybe bringing her over? I think I just need hopefully in a season 2 of this show they have some clarification on what his end goal is. Does it tie in with Harley or is it just for himself? And I do agree about the Undead King and Amanda Waller. It does feel as if they are sticking to like an understanding of their trope. Like,
Mm.
Amanda Waller is going to send in her Suicide Squad, and it felt like the story just kind of worked alongside that. And I wonder if it's because they were like, we're not going to have too much on-screen time with Amanda Waller. Let's just kind of remove her from the equation in a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a big part of this, that they just weren't quite sure what they were going to do with her. And I don't think they really needed to do much because she's not on the ground.
True.
So, yeah, though it is kind of disappointing when you have a Suicide Squad to not get the head of the Suicide Squad.
Is that a pun intended?
Yeah, yeah. It's explosive. But what does keep this series going in terms of characterization is the squad themselves. This is a great assembly. I think, this goes down in history next to the 2021 Suicide Squad for me as the best assembled Suicide Squad I've seen. Yeah. Not necessarily I'm saying the story, but I'm saying the best just squad straight out. The two standouts for me, Peacemaker, absolutely. This character has come so far in the past few years. It's absolutely insane.
Really has.
Like from a nobody to
right
headlining a multi-season show, and now when Suicide Squad is mentioned, you got to put him in Mortal Kombat. You got to put him in all these different DC games. I would not be surprised if we saw him in Injustice 3. So you have Peacemaker. He's so funny, and he has this weird thing where he's just very precise. Like he's able to count down the amount of times before their bombs recycle to down to the second.
Oh man, I know, how is he keeping that count in his head? Is it like he's walking? Is it like, because you will lose that in just general conversations? I'm very forgetful at times, so it's like I'm impressed that someone could keep a count on how long they have before their head blows up.
I mean, it's good that he can.
That's true.
You should. But yeah, I thought he was absolutely fantastic, and I also Clayface really stole the show for me. He's that light-skinned friend that looks like Michael Jackson, as was said in the ancient texts. But
I'm not. Let me not say that other line. Let me not say that other line.
Could stop it right there. But yeah, because he has this ability to lean on the fourth wall. He's constantly saying, "Oh, this is an isekai," and constantly pointing out tropes. And he's having so much fun. It sounds like a ball to play this character who is very flamboyant, and it makes the moments where he does get very serious really good, because it doesn't happen often. And he definitely gave me one of my favorite all-time moments of the season when Amanda Waller sets off the bomb in Clayface's neck to warn them all, and they're mourning him because his head exploded, and then he off screen just casually jumps back into the conversation. Everybody's like, what the hell? And they were like, oh, I could just move my brain to another organ. Did you guys not know I could do that? And like, why were you here the whole time? Just wanted to have a good time, I guess. Yeah. Like, it is absolutely great. Those are my standout characters for the season.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same boat with Clayface. I think because to me, he showed that he just loved the story. And I think that's what I really wanted to see. It was just like, it's more so a love letter to just the idea of this created scenario. And it was like, if you have an understanding of it, you understand how to like what possibilities are out there for you, so you want to try it all. And he's like picking up on all the things so much quicker than the rest of his team. So definitely enjoyed that scene. I definitely also enjoyed like him having his fun with like, there's this one scene in particular where he's like flirting with these two women, and then he's like, oh, let me show you one of my greatest ones, and he just recreates the scene from the end of Terminator 2. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is my Riz moment right here. And they're like, this is kind of creepy. We're gonna walk away now. So yeah, I think Basil Clayface, my man, he did a great job in this. I think the other person who, while I I'm a little upset of the hairstyle choice because we went back to the Killmonger. I did like Deadshot's character a lot, because I felt like this was a more youthful take on Deadshot. Um, because there were many times in which like you saw him interacting with the group in such a ridiculous way. Like there are times in which, you know, they don't have an idea about what to do in this particular part of the plan where they're waiting on a signal. So once he hears something, he just immediately kicks Rick Flag down the cliff. And I think a lot of the scenes, which I did appreciate with Studio incorporating, was like a lot of the facial expressions that we saw throughout the show. Very much are very similar to what you'll see in a lot of like anime, especially as we got later into the years of the anime and the more current styles of anime. And you saw he had that same level of expression on his face with the cheesy smiles of knowing that he's about to do no good. The shock look on his face. Like I felt like he is a very animated character in this particular world. And I will love to see how that translates when he's back over in like his universe of Gotham, because this particular version of Deadshot is probably one of my favorite versions of Deadshot right now. I mean, obviously there's still like Christian Slater's version in Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, but I think like this version of Deadshot knew that he can have fun, especially because he has this like militant kind of style to him, because it's like, yes, he knows how to shoot, he knows how to have the precision and all that, but to still be able to joke around with your team, it feels like he really was a fun guy to even just hang around with, probably when he was getting all of this training as well.
Yeah, it definitely, this is definitely like the most human Deadshot I've seen in a while, which I get in other adaptations. It kind of works for him to be kind of like stone cold, except for the daughter thing. But here I felt it was really nice.
And it's crazy because they also did it, like it was like one line, but they did include the daughter thing. Like they did introduce the concept of like how his family kind of abandoned him.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so nice about this, because usually Deadshot, you're only reminded that he's like a normal human when his daughter is brought into the equation, and then he kind of like instantly softens, which is fine. But it was nice to feel like he is his own personality, besides having a daughter. Very similar to what they did with Bloodsport in Suicide Squad 2021, where, you know, he has a relationship with Rick Flag. He's kind of a father figure to other people, but he also has a daughter, you know. So I did like a more well-dimensional Deadshot. Speaking of things I like, segueing on to the animation, this is the time we, you know, highlight any fight scenes or animation bits that we really liked. I'm going to jump in and say the closing sequence to this show, the dance sequence, the dance battle between Amanda Waller busting it down against the Suicide Squad. I almost never skip. Unless I had somewhere to go.
Wait, did you watch it on Hulu or Max?
I watched it on Max.
On Max. Yeah, as soon as the little thing came up, it was just like, we're gonna prepare you and get ready to skip to the next episode. I was like, click that X. We're watching Amanda Waller busting it down.
I don't know whose idea it was, but I'd like to give them a raise, because it was absolutely every time. I loved watching that.
Yeah. And I gotta agree. I mean, I already was in love with watching Amanda Waller busting it down here, but I love the fight scenes and the animation. This is just really just a kudos to Wit Studio, because this is definitely their art style. This is definitely their type of animation when it comes to it. It's like, you know, at times it seems as if it's like this is just like a quickly drawn illustration, but I think it was just so much fun to see how different scenes were animated and drawn and illustrated to depict certain times and places and areas as well. Like you have a clear sense of like when you're in Gotham on their world and this is like a flashback, you're like, okay, I know this. I don't need to just know this based off of like the cityscape or anything. Like I actually felt the difference in the scene versus when I'm in this isekai world. And then even just like the flashback for which is a in terms of the animation. Also, just quickly jump ahead for scenes that stuck out to me before I hop back over to fight scenes animation. The full conversation of how Deadshot and Ratcatcher knew each other.
Yes.
I thought this was a great take on how to draw this out. It is very similar, ironically, to the style of Red Hood and Joker and Harley Quinn back in Batman Ninja, but this scene made more sense for that particular style versus the most like triggering scene that you'll ever see in your life. This was just full fun hearing this, having conversations about what Ratcatcher likes to watch when he's like, you know, it's after 12 or something. I think these are the kinds of things that I expect from the illustration. I expect from the kind of scenes and fun moments like this. So I appreciate that they took the time to animate out not only time and place, but the fight scenes are just so well done. Like you get the sense of someone's moving fast. You get the sense that this is a powerful strike. You get the sense that someone is anticipating some kind of movement and they really thought it through. So I really appreciated the fact that they really did a great blend of the fight scenes and animation here in this particular show.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of standout scenes to watch. Every fight scene in this show was fun, but particularly the one that I have to highlight is King Shark versus Killer Croc versus Peacemaker versus a Sea Beast. This fight was multi-terrain. It was always kinetic. It was always fast. Fluid animation, beautiful, and it felt like two titans fighting. Even though they're not the technically most powerful characters on the show, in terms of like all around, their strength stats were really well handled and displayed. And again, this is probably the most intimidating Killer Croc I have ever seen. Maybe not in terms of look, but in terms of pure brawl ability. Like I said, Batman's not doing anything against this Killer Croc unless he got major hacks. So I really did like all of the fight scenes, but that one definitely multi-terrain, so fun. I highly recommend checking that one out.
I also like the punches that they were given because, you know, something that I feel like we take for granted a lot is like when we see punches being given in an anime setting, you see that like kind of lines being drawn to show the force of the punch coming out from the person's back. We don't really see that, I feel, in a lot of American or Western animation. So like seeing that done underwater was so cool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's a great segue to scenes that stuck out, good or bad. We've been teasing it long enough. Get into that Ratcatcher scene for me.
Yes. So back in about, I believe it was episode 4, at about the 5-minute mark. I actually don't know the exact minute mark, but it was one of the greatest scenes in cinema I've ever seen in my entire life. So upon learning that there are other people, this empire, as they're called in the show, that are helping to facilitate and move forward the war, they decide, our Suicide Squad here, our main cast here, decide to go and try to tackle it as being told by the queen of the kingdom. And this is when Ratcatcher, we see that Ratcatcher is the one who's manipulating these wolf-like creatures, again speaking to the sense that in this new world there's this whole new power set that all the villains have. So as soon as we get a chance to see Ratcatcher in action, we see that our Suicide Squad team comes up right behind him, and the first person to call him out is Deadshot, who's like, yo, Rat, this is my homie. Like, just give me some time. This is the actual dialogue of the show, and I'm so happy that they threw this in Japanese too, where Deadshot is calling Ratcatcher his homie and is explaining things like, you know, when Ratcatcher was in the pen with me, he was getting harassed, and I told people to back off because, you know, you don't want to mess with Ratcatcher. He got rats for days. He smells like them. They hang around with him. Those are his only friends. So why are you trying to mess with Ratcatcher? By messing with Ratcatcher, you're messing with like the world's worst person. And then we continuously see how Deadshot will continue to berate and insult this man during his entire time in prison. That includes dropping off a piece of stinky cheese because he thinks that's what Ratcatcher loves to eat, and stealing his fresher apple, cutting his hair while he's in the shower to give him the world's most ridiculous mohawk, and then telling the people not to put on a particular adult film because that's not the kind of thing Ratcatcher wants to see. He wants to see rats doing it.
Absolutely. Like this is, I mean, this, they didn't need to do this at all. Like that's why this scene is such a standout.
Oh my god. I watched it both. I watched this episode both. I watched this particular scene both in Japanese and in English because I needed to see the full effect, and it holds up on both sides. So good. Obviously, Ratcatcher now wants to kill Deadshot and immediately starts to attack him. To which Deadshot's like, "Yo, man, I thought you were homies. Why are you trying to kill me?"
It was that was the Deadshot Ratcatcher. Such an underrated interaction, but I love that. Yeah, I think a great scene, because you always want to see this in a Suicide Squad movie. There's a bar brawl that happens in the middle of the show where, you know, all the squad gets drunk and you get to see their personalities on display. And this is where, you know, they show their insecurities, their quirks. Like Peacemaker gets naked when he gets really drunk enough.
Well,
and again,
specifically, that
yes,
the shirt stays on.
Sure, and the helmet, of course. But this is another example of, again, where I feel like they were trying to knock at the 2016 movie, because the 2016 movie has a scene where they're in a bar and they're all sitting around drinking and they tell their backstories on an assembly line. But here, it's their actions that show it. It's their reactions to what pisses them off. And that's how we get a better sense of who these characters are. And that they're genuinely depressed, that, you know, they've done a lot of work for the world, but when they go back, they're going to be in jail, and the kingdom hates them for most of this. So I thought it was a really nice, you know, kind of bonding moment for the squad. And just a reminder that, you know, they all have these lives outside of being criminals and murderers. You know, they do have a legit life. And the just amount of jokes and bonding and character moments, it really did stake out as, again, not a scene we needed to have in the show, but again, something they took the time to put care and attention to.
Yeah. Another scene that stuck out for me was definitely the fight scenes that happened around the time when most of the Suicide Squad has to take on. This is specifically the Thinkers episode. That Thinker and Harley Quinn fight is just phenomenal work. I just finished watching, or at least not finished watching, because things still going on. I finally caught up on One Piece after a year-long journey. So the only way I can describe Harley Quinn in this particular fight is her hitting Gear 5 and the Genjutsu all at the same time just to take out Thinker, and it's phenomenal. I think, like, seeing that this particular character, the Thinker, who again has everything figured out, he knows exactly what to do to poke and push every button of the squad, but the one thing he can't account for is the mental instability that is Harley Quinn's brain.
Yeah, you gotta check that Thinker. This ain't Flash, you know.
That, and then it leads right into a battle between Katana and Harley Quinn. Amazing work, especially because it's such a twist where after Harley wins, the whole building that they're in comes apart, and then you're seeing that they haven't even won yet. And in fact, they're heading towards a loss, because Katana takes the body of Clayface and throws him in the water, which we learned that if you put Clayface in water, which is, I'm also assuming now, a scientific fact, well, Clayface will start to dissolve. So he immediately is able to pull himself back together to a certain extent, even in his like weakened state, to turn himself into a sword. And we get this amazing Wit Studio produced sword battle between Katana and Harley Quinn. It is wonderful work. It was definitely a scene that stuck out to me. My second most favorite scene in this entire show. But my first top scene, the scene that will forever be stuck in my head, or two scenes, because I'm going to kind of combine them a little bit here. The two scenes that I love all involve Peacemaker. There is, at one point during the battle, when Peacemaker decides to join in on the battle that Killer Croc and his sea beast brother is having against King Shark. Peacemaker enters the scene with an American flag and just yells out America and flies in like a bald eagle. That is the English dub.
Keith Bandit over here.
That is not a name I have heard in quite some time. And also speaking about the American dub as well, the English dub as well. Well, American dub, because obviously this had to be Americanized. During their transformation, I would say a great transformation, great fun that they have with this, because it's like ties directly into the transformations you'll see a lot of, either, I'm assuming, like Kamen Rider or Saint Seiya or even Sailor Moon, where the team powers up, the Suicide Squad, they get the armor. Peacemaker's version of this armor power up is getting two, I guess, like two cuffs around his biceps. And every time he flexes, he just spells out USA.
Hell yeah.
Because yeah. And when he does that, he just becomes, he gets pants, but he does go shirtless as he is ready to fight with the strength of America, including a bayonet pistol.
Yeah, I think I agree. All those scenes, again, Peacemaker's so fun, and I do love the Harley Quinn mental battle. It just, again, even though we haven't talked a lot about Harley, I mean, she has her own show, so don't worry, we love her. It's just like, it's nice to see all these other characters in a different spotlight than we usually get. So yeah, this is par for the course. We're used to seeing Harley do something crazy in a magical world, but it was a first for a lot of these other characters. So now it leads us to our final verdict with all the mental battles, the animation, the two-dimensional villains. Where are you sitting with this one? Is Isekai Season 1 a cape or a cap?
Oh, man. You know, it's crazy because I had a great time watching this show, but towards the end. So unfortunately, I have to give it a cap. It's the main reason why is because while I loved how the show came together, I loved the dynamics between the teams and everything. The thing that kept scratching in the back of my mind for me was that this is an isekai. This is supposed to be an anime. And something that I saw that for me was a little bit of an issue was that it's not until the very end where some stuff kind of like you have those true anime moments. It is still kind of treated like an American IP with the way that the story kind of is told in the first set of episodes. So I kind of just wish they had a bit more fun from the very beginning. And I'm keeping in mind too that because since this came out in 2024, I was thinking about some other anime that I have watched that came out in the same year that was also treated as an isekai. The one in particular that kept coming to mind was The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. And in this one, something that I saw that a lot of seems to be like the course for a lot of isekais nowadays is to have the characters come through and have like an explanation of like power sets and do all those things. I felt like because Suicide Squad is taking into account that maybe they're leaning towards their more American animation watchers for this, I think they follow the American animation storytelling and then try to have more fun with the Japanese storytelling later on. And I kind of wish that they had more moments like that throughout the entire thing, because it does even feel like in episodes that I felt like I kept thinking of like Dragon Ball Z, where a fight will last like 30,000 episodes. I feel like we got like a clear wrap up on a lot of episodes. So like the new next episode felt like I was just entering almost like a new task on the mission versus like, let's see how the ramifications from episode 2 lead into episode 3, because episode 2 didn't finish its fight yet. And then episode 3 would have ended with like either the introduction of a new fight or someone coming to attack. So I don't know if maybe this is just because it had a shorter episode order compared to most Japanese animation I've seen now, where usually they get like 13 in a season. But I do feel like maybe they kind of were afraid to make that full leap in the beginning, and then was just like, all right, we don't know what's going to happen with the show. We can make the leap now. But other than that, I will still say it's a really great show. Like, I do see myself wanting to watch season 2 if it does come out, because of the fact that I had a great time watching it towards the end. I just wish that they were a bit braver with making certain jumps in the beginning. Well, what about you? What do you think? Is this a cape or is this a Peacemaker cap?
I am gonna say it is a cape for me. I'm going against. I'm on that 6.5 IMDb. I think all your points are valid. I think that in terms of structuring it like an anime, it clearly went for being anime-esque, but not really being a true anime. Just the way the story moves and the flashbacks are definitely anime-esque. But yeah, this is not being. If this is advertised as come here to have an isekai experience, you're not really going to get that full isekai experience that you would get in another property. This is just the Suicide Squad Isekai. With that say, because there's no Batman, it's automatically a cape for me. Because DC.
That was another reason. Yeah, that's another reason why I loved it.
Can't hit the Batman button. But overall, this is it took a lot of risks, and that's what I really liked about this show. That not everything worked for me. I think they spent a lot of time on Harley's backstory, minority alteration. Please, let's see other backstories of the squad. Like we get Harley, but I'd love to see what Peacemaker, with this Deadshot, with this King Shark went through before this series. I definitely want to know what Clayface was up to before this and how he got captured. So there's definitely room to expand more on the personal backstories of these characters. But overall, I do think the structure of it, of putting them in a magical land and letting them run free, was fun. We didn't even mention really the dragon a lot, but they get a dragon at one point. It just kind of like opens the door for so many story possibilities. So I do think this is it's a diamond in the rough for sure. I think there is still a lot of polishing it needs to get done. Yeah. And I will say that in season 2, if season 2 is a repeat of season 1 exactly, then I would say it's a cap at that point. Because now's the time I want this series to really evolve and deepen. Now I feel like the foundation has been set. Let's build upon that to make something. Because overall, I think this is a really creative, really different approach from normal DC stuff that I think can be very successful and can be a template for other DC properties in the future. Like, if this opens up a door for a Green Lantern anime, come on.
Yeah, I'm just imagining Jon Stewart going through kind of like was it the Black Samurai Yasuke route?
Yes.
Like, that would be cold.
Exactly. So I'm hoping if we support this, we get a more in-depth season 2, and then this can start the trend for taking more risk as a whole. And I hope also there's a more dimensional villain and Amanda Waller gets more time to shine in the future. But for now, I think overall I still enjoyed what I saw. I was still looking forward to Isekai every week, even though I really had no idea what they were going to throw at me. So I'm going to say it's a cape, and that cape will become their cap if they don't move past where they've gone. But I do have optimism and hope for the future of Isekai itself and what it could mean going down the line for everything.
Yeah. So that's good. Listen, Isekai showrunners, you're there. You've done it. And especially you made the story without Batman that people enjoy. You're right there. You're at the goal line. Just make your way for that touchdown. It's possible. It is truly possible. I am glad that we got this. And I agree with you. I'm hoping for more expanded storytelling, more involvement, not only just with these characters. Maybe there are other characters that you would like to introduce into this, but as long as they're not Batman. The world is your oyster right now. You're so close, and I'm feeling it. So this is the plus size of cape for cap. It literally was a cape and the cap in this particular case.
Yes, that's to say, I think if you go give it a shot, so if you're tuned in, this is where you tune back in, I assume. If you give this show a shot, because there are no spoilers here, from the, I was Cape, co-host is Gap. You might not like it. You might think it's too weird, or you might say this is the best thing you've ever seen, or you might fall in the middle, find some things you like, find some things you don't. But definitely, as I always say, if you want something different, if you want DC to change, if you want superhero media to change, you gotta try different stuff. You gotta sample different goods. And this is something worth at least giving a 2-episode try before you walk away or fully commit. So please give this one a shot too. I know it's not as, big as Harley Quinn or Kite Man or any of those, but it's definitely worth sitting down and just, seeing if you like it. Seeing if you want to get isekai too.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to wrap up our episode here we're here for, again, our running back season, where we're going through our summer shows that came out, especially under the DC moniker. Join us next week as we take flight in a lot of green and just shout out, hell yeah, as we talk about Kite Man, hell yeah. So be sure to support us either through a one-time gift on Buy Me a Coffee or monthly through Patreon. You can always check us out on our socials for updates on episodes that you can find across Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and any other platform you get your podcast on. Take care of yourselves, and remember that if you disturb someone's peace, they may come at you with no pants on.
And if you happen to get isekai to the same world as this very jacked Killer Croc, I'm sorry, my boy, but it's over. Toss in the towel. You're finished. We have no advice. We have no pointers. You're cooked. You're just cooked.
Thanks again for listening. If you liked what you heard, press that follow button and share us with a friend. And don't forget, you can always see more updates and content on our social media accounts just by searching @Cape or Cap.